The latest news, national issues, the political scene, and conversations with prominent personalities. All these firsthand at the forefront. Architect Shamcey Supsup-Lee just issued an official statement on her resignation as councilor aspirant in Team Kaya This. She says that, quote and unquote, as a woman, mother, and a leader, I believe in staying true to the values that define me: dignity, respect, accountability, and women empowerment. Prior to Architect Shamcey's resignation, fellow Kaya This congressional aspirant Christian Sia drew flack when he made a joke on single moms. Many believe his statements as sexist or misogynistic. Congresswoman Bernadette Herrera is now calling for a congressional inquiry citing clear violation of the Safe Spaces Act. What would speaking up entail, and what does she hope to change in public officials' demeanor during campaign? With us this morning, live at the BNC studio, is the representative of Bagong Henerasyon Party List, Congresswoman Bernadette Herrera. Good morning, Congresswoman Bernadette.
Good morning, Karen, and thank you for having me here.
Okay, let's start first with the comment that drew flack for congressional aspirant Attorney Christian Sia. What was your initial reaction to his comment?
Well, the very first thing I did was forwarded it to Election Chairman George Garcia, and I told him, paano pwede ba to? Sabi ko, look at this. Please take a look at this, because number one, it's offensive to solo parents. It's as if you're implying that the plight of the solo parents is very hard already, di ba? It's hard enough. And gusto mo pa sabihin, sex lang ang kailangan ng solo parents. That's very, very bad and offensive. Na para bang, tapos kinlasify pa niya kung yung mga nireregla pa, ha? So bastos talaga eh.
Congresswoman Bernadette, let's take a look at that video para doon naman sa mga hindi pa narinig. At least they can relate to what we're talking about. So let's watch this.
Minsan sa isang taon, ang mga solo parent na babae na nireregla pa, Nay, malinaw, nireregla pa, at nalulungkot, minsan sa isang taon, pwede sumiping ho sa akin. Yun yung interesado, magpalista na ho rito sa mesa sa gilid.
Yeah, okay. So, for you, as soon as you saw this, you gave a heads up to
immediately,
Chairman George Garcia
na do something about this. Kasi I'm an author of the anti-bastos law, yung Safe Spaces Act. Yes, so talagang parang sa akin, dapat right there and then he was arrested na. Citizen's arrest pwede na eh. Somebody should have brought him.
Yung in flagrante delicto.
Yes. Ay, abogado ka. So, alam mo yun. So, dapat right there and then, dinala na siya. Tapos, penalty na siya. Pinailan na siya ng kaso. Para na-serve na niya yung sentence niya. Tapos, may second offense pa siya pagkabawi niya niyan. Meron pa siyang bagong sinabi na hindi ako manyak ha. As a matter of fact, ito yung staff ko. Tingnan mo, dati mapayat yan. Ngayon mataba na siya. So, hindi ako manyak kasi ito staff ko. So, that's already second offense. Kaya talagang sabi ko kay Attorney George, i-disqualify mo na yung tao yan.
But Congresswoman Bernadette, the fact that no one thought of even saying, okay, he committed an offense under the Safe Spaces Act, so we can actually arrest him because he is caught in the act of committing the offense. Yung walang nakarealize nun, and well, I mean, objectively, I'm watching this video now, and meron naman tumatawa sa background. What does that indicate about the Filipino culture? Is it a lack of awareness that the law exists, RA 11313, and perhaps they don't see this an offense?
Well, culturally kasi, talagang kahit pa paano, may bias pa rin sa kababaihan eh. That's why we keep on passing these laws. Para lang sa ganun magising ang mga kalalakihan natin na it's really time that you always should respect women and huwag kaming gawing kakatawanan or topic of your jokes. Kaya namin pinasutong batas na to na para ma-call ang attention to everyone. But apparently, kulang pa rin kami sa education kasi dapat may anti-sexual harassment officers na ang bawat barangay. So supposed to be yung kagawad or kung sino man in charge doon na barangay na yon should have acted upon it if the LGU implemented the law. Kasi supposed to be after this law, which was passed in 2019, dapat nag-create na ng ordinances. But I was asking Pasig, I think they have that ordinance already. So dapat itignan, kaya that's why I filed a resolution, kung bawat barangay ba may anti-sexual harassment officers na. Kasi dapat may briefing yan. So DILG should be at the forefront of this. Tapos yung Women's and Child's Desk, bakit hindi rin nag-act yung PNP? Kasi dapat sila din
di ba yung
umaksyon.
desk nila? I mean, based on the reading of the law,
pati
the desk
MMDA.
should be available.
Yes, even MMDA, PNP. So lahat dapat yan. Pati barangay, kasi nga citizens arrest eh. So meaning there's really a lack of information dissemination when it comes to this. So I'm hoping this will be an example. Kaya nananawagan ako sa Pasig, sa PNP. Pero mag-file naman na ng complaints eh. Kasi dahil hindi na na-caught in the act. So dapat somebody has to file a complaint already para nang siguro makasuhan na po siya.
Who will file a complaint?
The solo parents of Pasig.
Okay, because the solo parents, Gabriela, party
Yeah.
list, I think wrote to the Supreme Court to complain, but it was a letter to the Chief Justice.
The National
And
Council
then-
for Solo Parents, yung third nominee ko is the president of the National Council for Solo Parents. They already filed a case in COMELEC and also filed in IBP, a petition.
Yes, oo.
A petition
So,
for
dalawa,
disciplinary
diba? Yeah.
action and a petition for, well, bahala na sila if disciplinary action or disbarment, kung ano man minimerit. Siyempre, we leave it up to IBP and the Supreme Court kung anong gusto nila. So we filed that petition. The National Council for Solo Parents filed that petition. And today, pupunta sila sa Pasig police para mag-file na ng case.
Okay, and I was also watching the interview of Christian Sia here at On Point with Pinky Webb, and he was saying that, well, he seems to be explaining that he made the joke in good faith because dati daw sinabi niya na yung joke na yan na meron pa daw ibang solo parents and they found it funny, so he didn't think it was offensive. Isn't that defense under the Safe Spaces Act?
Of course not. That's precisely the point. Na hindi niya man nakita. Siya mismo, hindi niya makita na may problema doon. May problema talaga siya. Diba? Na para sa'yo, talagang pwede siyang topic of a joke. Hindi nga siya dapat nakakatawa para sa'yo, lalo na abogado ka. You should know the law. Diba? So, yun nga yung pangat sa kultura natin eh. Diba? Parang, mababait kasi ang mga Pilipino. So, tatawa sila kahit deep inside, nasasaktan sila. Diba? Kasi out of respect, sa pang nire-respeto ng mga solo parents na, sige, tatawa na lang kami, pero masakit yun sa amin. That's how Filipinos are. Mababait tayo eh. And that's what we want to correct.
Okay.
Na not because we don't express ourselves means you can already do that. Kaya I hope this will be an example. Para lang to call attention of everyone na, hey, mag-ingat naman kayo sa kampanya. And yun yung kulang sa batas namin eh. Nakalagay pag government employee, wala pag public official. So I need to put that in the law na dapat
That's
pag
true.
public official, dapat specific candidate ka and all that. Yun ang hindi namin nailagay sa Safe Spaces Act na huwag siyang gawing topic of a joke. And remember, after that, marami pang sumunod. Kasi nga, dahil nangyari to, lumabas na yung lahat ng mga kinaiinisan ng tao.
Yeah.
The mere fact that it was uploaded, ibig sabihin, they don't find it funny.
You think they don't find it funny?
That's why they
I was
uploaded it.
thinking kaya may nag-upload because akala nila it's acceptable.
No, galit sila kaagad eh when they uploaded it. So stop saying na tumawa yung mga tao. Kasi the mere fact that somebody uploaded it na nagagalit, ibig sabihin, they don't find it funny. The solo
Did you check the
parents,
comments?
Yes,
Marami bang
the solo
offended?
parents are so mad. I was in Cebu the following day for a solo parent meet and greet sa Car, sa Cebu City, at saka sa Compostela. All of them talaga nagpapasalamat na thank you, you called attention. Thank you, you messaged Attorney George. Thank you, nag-file kayo ng case. Thank you, as in, nagpapasalamat sila. Siyempre, iba, talagang sa buwiset, talagang tuluyan nyo na yan, tuluyan nyo yan. Kaya yung third nominee ko, siyempre, 15 years na siya, advocate for solo parents. He was one of those who lobbied the law to be passed in Congress, a solo parent law, and the expanded solo parent law. Kaya talagang sobra silang offended by this.
And going back to the history of how you came up with the idea of the Safe Spaces Act, personally, did you encounter sexist comments before or any of your close friends or family?
Attorney Karen, alam mo naman, nasa politika ako. I'm surrounded with men. Alam mo naman yung mga biron, mga... Yes, that's why nag-pass kami ng ganitong batas. Kasi sometimes they make it as a joke and all that. So, and akala nila nakakatuwa. Akala na nakakatawa. Kaya talagang ginawa namin itong batas na to na kahit catcalling, di ba, yung pagpipito, yung pagsasabi lang na, oy, ang sexy mo naman.
When I was reading
I'm
the
sure you
Safe
get those
Spaces
comments
Act,
too, Attorney Karen.
But you know, pareho tayo sa legal profession, it's dominated by men, especially the ones that have moved up the ladder. So, masasanay ka na rin minsan sa parang what they would say nga to make an excuse. And kasi old school yung mga yan eh. So, you kinda get used to jokes na ganon. But then, di ba tayo, culturally, sa law, parang pag sinabi nila, hindi naman niya sinasadyang makasakit or wala namang malis, then we don't equate that with a criminal offense. But again, if there's a law that makes it illegal, then malice has to be an element in order for you to say that it's an excuse na hindi ka criminally liable. Pero pag walang nakasulat doon na kailangan ng malice, then it is outright a criminal offense. Like,
criminal
in this
offense
case,
na siya. No need for malice and all that. The mere fact na pumito ka, the mere fact na kasi it depends on how it was also accepted eh. Diba? Like you said, ikaw minsan you're already deaf on it or you're just used to it or parang you just brush it off and all that. But some do not want to brush it off.
Yeah, but again, tama ka, it goes into rewiring it. With laws like this, then you're rewiring the brains of people that it's not acceptable.
Parang
and perhaps the younger generation then, especially the men, the boys, will learn that, it's not acceptable.
Actually, if you see now, mas ma-respectful ang mga bata ngayon. I mean, mas sensitive sila to these things than yung mga matatanda. Kasi yung discrimination against women, nandun sa mga matatanda eh. Sa mga bata, medyo kahit papano, they already recognize that men and women are equal.
Yeah.
So, makita mo naman dito, talaga makikita mo sa mga matatanda nangyayari to.
Yeah, and two other similar issues also came out. Like you said, naglabasan ng iba. The first is Batangas Vice Mayor Jimeno Ilagan, who took a swipe at his opponent Vilma Santos for being old and also used the word nahihipo. So let's watch this.
Kung ang aking kalaban ay si Catherine Bernardo, pero ang aking kalaban ay isang Vilma Santos laang nalaos na. Ha? Hindi ako takot. Kung si Catherine Bernardo at si Andrea Brillantes ay takot ako. Pero Vilma Santos, ang kanyang marami naman sa mga fans niyan ay namamahinga na rin. Ang iba naman ay hindi na rin, siyempre, nasa edad yan. At saka laging ang sasabihin ko sa inyo, iba ang governor na nahihipo, naimbitahan, napupuntahan sa bahay, pwedeng mapuntahan, makapagpaperma at anumang pangailangan. At ako ang governor na 24 hours ang serbisyo.
Okay, so ngayon ko lang narinig yung full kasi.
Ako rin. I just read it eh. I never saw this clip.
Okay.
Diba? Yung the mere fact that they can say it in front of everybody means parang it's okay.
But
kaya we
for
have
me,
to react,
if you're already
Attorney Karen.
saying it, obviously, in their head, it's okay.
It's precisely. Kasi nasanay sila na hindi nila alam yung batas eh. Nobody has, wala pang nasampulan. So, dapat may masampulan.
So, from the time it's passed, wala pa palang na convict for any of these offenses?
Well, siguro mga minor, I'm sure meron sa mga barangays and all that. I'm sure meron. Pero yung ganito kasi, hindi pa natin natatry sa mga elected officials, those campaigning and all that. Kasi we have just passed the law. Well, 2022 elections. Parang,
matagal na rin. It's more than 5 years old.
So kung based on doon sa kumakampaign, walang nakasuhan ng 2022. So I hope now, 2025, ito may mangyari sa atin dito.
Well, I don't know if we have the clip, but he did have a defense for his statement. But do you find I don't know if you've heard of his defense when he said this. I don't know, do we have a clip of that? Wala eh, but have you heard what he said?
What did he say?
Okay, but is there any excuse if he says that he said it out of good faith naman or na pa-joke lang naman?
But that's even worse nga. That's even worse. Nasasabihin mo, joke lang to. Yun nga eh, huwag mo kaming gawing topic of a joke. Women, senior citizen, PWDs, hindi kami topic ng joke. Kaya nga dapat nasa priorities ng pinagsisilbihan ng gobyerno yan eh. And qualified yun, Karen, if I don't know kasi kung senior, if senior citizen ang ino-offend mo pa.
Yeah. Or PWD, it's in
or
the law, right?
PWD, mas
Oo.
mataas pa ang penalty. You go straight to the second offense.
And then I guess that's where you pointed out that there's a need to amend it, because I read the law where there's also a higher penalty if the offense or the perpetrator is a government employee. Pero hindi ba government employee and public officials?
Well, pwedeng, kayo, ikaw, abogado ka, so I really don't know kung pwedeng i-consider ng elected official. I'm sure dapat pwede.
Yeah,
pero
because
kasi,
technically they're government employees.
But
like,
every time, mas maganda na ilagay natin. Para there's
or
no,
I suppose,
or
what about candidates? Yeah, kasi they're
so,
not yet
candidates,
government
employees, siguro kailangan lang ilagay para i-specify elected officials. Kasi sometimes, iniiba-iba nila yung, di ba kami, like we're not under civil service, so we're not government employees if you look at it that way.
So, I guess you can have a lawyer that will split hairs in order to defend a
so mas mabuti na
defendant or
yung
accused.
you're redundant in the law para walang lusot. At saka yan nga, dapat mas mataas ang offense nila kasi they're running for public office. You want to serve these people at sasabihin mo, ito lang ang kailangan nyo. So, culturally, siguro, kaya nga sabi ko, it's not because it's kinasanayan, ibig sabihin tama. So it's time that we step up and correct it.
And let's look at this next other recent issue. So, another remark that also became controversial was a joke by Misamis Oriental Governor Peter Onabia, who talked about his planned scholarship for beautiful and sexy female nursing students only. Let's watch this.
Katawan sa Villanueva para ni sa mga babae. Dili pwede ang lalaki. At katupag yung mga babae nga gwapa. Di man pwede nga maot. Kaya kung luya ng mga lalaki, at tubangon sa pangit nga nurse, nausa naman. Musamot atong sakita na. Ha? Kinang lang gwapa.
Okay, so
You know what's sad about this? I think kasama ko siya sa Congress during the time that we passed this law. Congressman siya, kasi classmate ko siya sa Congress, naging classmate ko siya. I just don't know if it's this particular Congress na kasama ko siya. So,
did he support this bill?
well, basta napasa siya, syempre you're still part of that Congress. If I'm not sure, I have to check, pero nakasama ko siya sa Congress, so kung
So
iisipin
clearly
ko,
he's aware of
He
this
should be.
law. Yeah.
He should be because he was once a congressman at dumaan naman to. Kaya doon nga ako nakikiusap dito, sana ma-consider siya as government employee.
But I'd be curious if we had like a sit down with these candidates that made these remarks, kung may focus group discussion and you really ask them, was your joke offensive? Like perhaps there's really like a lack of awareness that they can be or they are
Talagang
offensive.
insensitive. Maraming men who are insensitive to these na akala nila okay lang sa babae. Kasi hindi sila babae. So they don't know how it affects us. That's why it's high time that we teach them that you be careful with your words also because a lot of people are offended by it. Especially, wag mo kaming just to gain crowd, yung magising yung crowd, mabuhay yung crowd. Don't use women or don't use the senior citizens. Just for you to get traction, for you to be popular, for you to be funny. So parang you're using them just to be able to, spark an interest.
But Congresswoman Bernadette, imagine this is only becoming an issue because meron ng social media na madalis ma-upload.
Yes.
Pero how many of these were done in the past na hindi natin alam, di ba?
Sobrang dami.
Oo.
As in, sobrang dami. Kasi actually, ibang reaction dito, may iba. Sus, ba't mo pa pinapatulan yan? Wala yan. Ganon. So, talagang makikita mo sometimes, yung meron pa rin mga lalaki na, sexist. Marami pa rin talagang lalaking sexist. And I'm happy that with social media, it can be corrected. Kaya ngayon sasabi ko, we are in a new era now, magbago na rin kayo. Diba? Hindi pwede na rin yung ganyan. You also have to adjust to the times now. I'm sure they would say, you brush it aside. Pero kaya nga may COMELEC resolution din Kasama na yan sa COMELEC resolution. Imagine, even that hindi nila binasa. Kasi for them to use these remarks, hindi nila nabasa yung COMELEC resolution that they can be disqualified for it.
Yeah, and there's a task force in COMELEC, the Safe Space Task Force. So
expressly stated, Attorney Karen.
The COMELEC devoted like a task force for this purpose. But Considering that, for example, we've had these 3 very recent comments that were made during the campaign trail. Is the COMELEC Safe Space Task Force able to really monitor? Because it seems like with the candidate, Attorney Christian Sia, it was because of reports and coming from you directly as
ganun,
well.
alam mo,
kung
puro
wala
ganyan
ka,
lang yan.
do you think the task force is effectively able to monitor?
Because of social media, they will get it instantly. Kasi ang ginagawa naman ng mga tao when they post it, tinatag na lang COMELEC eh. So it costs their... Yun ang inam ng may social media ngayon. Ang bilis talaga kumalat ng ano. So imposibleng hindi makukuha ng COMELEC o ng police.
And in the law itself, how do you guard against abuse naman? So for example, it can be also used to either harass a person, like with cases filed against them. And there's usually a difference in opinion as to what would be a sexist comment or a misogynistic comment. Ano yung mga standards that would
that's
help
why we
guide?
That's why we defined it eh. Kasi kung sexist yung police na pupuntahan mo, pwedeng i-brush aside niya. So hindi dapat ganun. That's why we put specifics kung ano-ano ang pwedeng consider na sexist remark. As in catcalling, whistling, and all that. Nilagay talaga natin yun doon. And of course, as in any other naman, syempre you have to prove it.
Yeah.
Diba? You have to prove it. So, madali naman yun i-prove kasi kung may mga kapitbahay ka dyan, may witnesses ka naman. Kaya importante na babae yung nasa women's and children's desk. Kaya laging I make sure na yung nasa women's and children's desk is babae so that they can relate to the woman who's reporting.
Yeah, a lot of it is contextual as well,
Yeah.
diba? Like, maintindihan mo siya depending on the context.
Kaya it's hard
of when
kung
it happened.
lalaki eh. Kasi pinsan, katulad ng violence against women before, pag may mag-asawang nag-aaway, minsan binabrush aside na domestic, hindi, away mag-asawa yan. Pero diba, that's why we passed the law para nang siguro, hindi lang yan basta away mag-asawa, that's violence against women. So it takes education. Years pa rin to of training. Kaya dapat, I'm calling on DILG, kailangan magkaroon talaga ugat ng sensitivity training sa ating mga PNP, sa MMDA, kasi sila yung mga anti-sexual harassment officers, pati sa mga barangays.
So right now, wala pang ganun? Wala pang sensitivity training?
Meron. Supposed to be.
Yeah.
DILG has done this, they said. Pero, wala, siguro matagal. Yung awareness is really very hard. Especially, like you said, culturally. Parang ingrained na sa ating mga uncles, parents, or mga matataas na iba talaga yung view nila pa sa babae.
Oo. There's another provision in the Safe Spaces Act that if you brush against the body parts
Yeah.
of a woman,
Grouping.
or even any body parts like in the chest area, but even the face, it can also be considered a violation of the
Yes.
law. So pag yun ba, paano mong i-distinguish yung accidental brushing? So parang, again, that's the other part where magkakaiba yung version naman ng story na, it was accidental. So yung mga ganung bagay, what would be guidelines for people?
Well, yun na talagang subjective din. Depende na yan pagdating nila sa court. Kasi kailangan nilang kailangan marinig kung anong version ng isa at version ng isa eh. Kasi ang daling ilusot sometimes na accident siya. Pero kung tutusin, hindi. Pwedeng sinadya talaga. Diba? So, yun yung mga bagay na hindi pa natin nasusubukan kung paano i-justify kung which is which. I haven't seen anything filed pa that can determine that. Pero, syempre, it's up to them to prove that it was an accident, and it's up to the other person to prove that it wasn't. Kaya lang, ang dali kasing sabihing accident eh. Lalo na kung if
Of course, that would be the easiest defense.
easiest
that you can-
defense.
yeah.
Hindi, accident lang yun. Pero syempre, alam naman natin, Karen, kung ano yung sexual innuendo and hindi. Alam natin, sa tingin pa lang ng mata, alam ng babae yun. Hindi pwedeng i-deny yun. Alam natin, we're very sensitive to that. I'm sure you know what I'm saying. We feel that kung binabastos tayo just by looking at us, by ano. So, that's why kailangan wala rin such a thing as accident eh. Di lumayo ka sa babae, ba't ka lalapit ng ganun? What is that opportunity para makabrush ka ng babae? Unless nasa MRT ka at siksikan ka,
Well,
di ba?
it is in the law as well na pag nasa public utility vehicles
Yes,
ka,
diba?
mas mataas pa yung penalty.
Kaya nga, lumayo
para
ka. Ang point ko, ang lalaki, lumayo ka para wala kang accident, hindi ka ma-subject to whatever abuse like you're saying. Diba? You be careful. That's why men has to be very careful with this law. Kasi very sensitive yung batas na to. Talagang konti lang, pwede ka nang makasuhan.
Yeah. But what I find interesting is also it's gender-based in a sense that it doesn't specify men
For women. Oh, yan,
and
no.
women.
Pati
So,
naman-
not like the old laws we have in the revised penal code where the offended party is usually specified as a woman. In this case, it can be also a man or
Yes.
or LGBTQ.
Like, for example, yung remark ni Governor, sabi niya, pang babae lang to. So parang diniscriminate mo na yung men, di na sila pwedeng mag-nurse. Ang dami-daming lalaking nurses. Diba? At sometimes, ba't kailangan natin ng male nurses? Magbubuhat ka ng pasyente. Hindi kaya ng babae yun. Diba? Mahirap magbuhat ng, kung mabigat yung pasyente. So that's what I'm saying, you shouldn't discriminate also against men. Because there are men nurses. Ba't mo sasabihin, hindi, pambabae lang to?
Na maganda.
May maganda pa.
May maganda.
Pero you're also discriminating against men. So kasama pa rin yun dito sa Safe Spaces Act. Kasi inaalisan mo ng trabaho ang mga lalaki at nakalimutan mo, sinong, di ba? Pagka malaki ang patient, then you have to carry the patient or dead weight yung patient.
Yeah. But at least the good point is the Safe Spaces Act protects all genders.
All genders,
Oo.
yes.
Do you think that all these misogynistic statements from candidates started because of former President Duterte's past behavior and statements? But before you answer that question, we'll have to take a short break. At the Forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the Forefront. Congresswoman Bernadette, do you think that all these misogynistic statements from candidates started because of former President Duterte's past behavior and statements?
I don't think so. Kasi dati pa naman namin fina-filing bill na to even before the Congress when we passed it. Even before pa, hindi lang kami nagpo-progress. So for the first time nga, naipasa namin under his presidency, under his administration in April 2019. So dati pa namin, siguro it's if not the second or the third Congress na na-file tong bill na to. Hindi naman bago ang misogynistic remarks ng mga lalaki, Karen, Attorney Karen, di ba? Hindi yan bago. So, no, as a matter of fact, the mere fact that he signed this, there's this one bill na naipasa namin, both Congress and Senate, yung anti-palo bill, yung positive discipline bill, yun, vinito niya.
Binito ni President Duterte that
Binito
time.
ni President Duterte, but ito pinasa niya. So meaning, and he signed it, ha? He signed it. Hindi niya pinalapse into law. He signed it. So, no, I don't think it's because of him.
And like you said nga, parang culturally,
Culturally,
kasi we've been dealing with this for many years. So now, this law would have a chance to rewire the brains of Filipinos if there's still some who find this as acceptable or part of society.
Yeah, especially for LGBTQIA community. Sila yung madalas nakaka-experience nito. Kaya talagang, maybe this is also an opportunity for them to take a look at the Safe Spaces Act. Para, baka pagkatapos ito, Attorney Karen, marami nang magpunta sa mga presinto. Hindi ako magtataka kung maraming mag-file ng case against using that Safe Spaces law. Kaya I'm thankful that you invited me here because this bill, this law, pag nabasa, I'm sure napakadaming magko-complain ngayon sa PNP,
Yeah.
Women's and Children's Desk. Kaya mag-ready po kayo.
Actually, before this law nga, it's hard to complain and file a criminal complaint. Like, we do have a very old provision in the revised penal code on unjust vexation. But parang it's not something that you think of as something you can file if you hear a joke like this.
Well,
but because this made it very clear, then nung nangyari nga yung kay Attorney Christian Sia, parang when they said that the complaint will be filed, then it clearly fell under this law na pwede.
Actually, Karen, what's sad nga is Attorney Christian is a lawyer. So he should be the one who's sensitive about these things kasi you should be protecting these women. But I think, Attorney Karen, one thing din siguro, kasi sometimes yung mga nafa-file ng cases, mga grabe. Before kasi a person goes to the police, yung grabe na yung case na naramdaman nila. Like, for example, sa Women's and Children's Desk, ang laman ng mga kaso dyan, mga na-rape na bata. So yun, napakalalim. So parang minsan, napakahirap mag-file ng case. So, waste of time.
Yeah.
Kaya hindi siya nagpa-progress. Kasi syempre, magastos din naman kumuha ka ng abogado para mag-file ng complaint. Hindi rin siya mura. So kung It's why hindi siya napapractice sa sampulan. Kasi to spend money for filing, hindi pag-aaksayahan ng mga walang pera.
But Congresswoman, you
That's why we
raise
have to
a
address
very valid point because as it is, a lot of our courts are congested.
Yes.
There's so many pending cases. And even the prosecutors are loaded with so many criminal complaints. So, paano bang, how do you, maybe that's something you can consider with the amendments, perhaps like the same way with civil cases where you have small court claims. Like for small claims, meron tayong courts that deal with that so that it's a faster process and it's also not expensive when it comes to filing fees. Dito naman, wala namang filing fees.
Or empower the lupuan tagapamayapa.
Yeah, exactly.
Kasi meron
So
naman tayong
perhaps you don't
barangays,
need to bring this to the
police.
courts.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
it's not a complicated process of having a preliminary investigation with the same rigor as the more complex cases.
Yes, we'll take a look at that. That's why when you were talking about it, I was thinking of lupuan tagapamayapa. Total, the barangays are tasked to be anti-sexual harassment enforcers. So baka in their level, they could settle it. Total, the penalty naman are low. 1,000 pesos, 3,000 pesos, 10,000.
Yeah. Meron lang ibang mataas.
And may community service. So sabi ko kasi Atty. Sia, dapat na siya community service, 6 to 12 hours lang. Mag-servisyo siya sa mga solo parents. In terms of defending them, maraming kaso ang solo parents. They need a lot of assistance when it comes to free legal advice.
Pero yung mga pagkakakulong, you don't think that's too severe? Because there are penalties
May
of imprisonment.
or naman siya, may or.
Yeah. Fine or imprisonment.
It's a number of days. Well, kasi you have to send a message, Attorney Karen. You really have to send a message for it to stop. And actually, kaya lang naman ito nagpa-progress, like I said, because there's social media. But, like I also said, at sinabi mo, you corrected me na you're suggesting na magawa tayo sa mga barangay level. Kasi nga sometimes, it's tedious to file a case. So that's why hindi siya nasasampulan because it's tedious to file a case.
And also we have to consider
And it's
the load
expensive.
of the courts.
The load of the courts
it will also delay the other cases that are more severe that need to be penalized.
Yun yung masakit. Siyempre, we have to face reality na may level yung seriousness ng cases.
And Congresswoman
we'll take a look
Bernadette,
at that.
you're calling for a House probe into the statements that Attorney Christian Sia made. Will you be including the other recent statements as well of other candidates? And do you think this is still necessary, considering that for Attorney Christian Sia, there were complaints already that were filed against him, an election offense case with the COMELEC, and also a letter was made to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court?
Well, the probe kasi is to correct or amend the law also and to check if it's being implemented by DILG and the barangays and the cities, our cities and municipalities, because they're supposed to create their own ordinance in the respective municipalities and cities. So the probe is to check if all cities have actually implemented the law or ordinance in their respective cities. And at the same time, to check kung anong kulang, bakit nangyayari. Bakit hindi na-report sa right there and then? Anong ginawa ng anti-sexual harassment officer ng barangay ng Pasig ngayon? Bakit hindi siya dinala immediately? Kasi immediately kung nadala siya, di nakapag-penalty siya at nakapag-serve siya ng community service niya and it sent a message sana to everyone, hey, the law is active. It's being implemented. So that's why there's a house. That's why it's important to have a house probe on this. Para oversight. Kasi we have to have an oversight. You can't keep quiet naman, Attorney Karen. Especially, ayaw din namin na hindi in-implement the laws that we pass. Pinaghirapan namin to eh. You know, we spent years to pass this law and then no one's implementing
Bakit
it.
years? What
Because
was the challenge?
ilang congresses, syempre because maraming lalaki sa Congress. I'm sorry. You know, ganun eh. It's hard to pass laws on women sometimes still in the House of Representatives.
Well, since we're on that topic, yung dominated pa rin ng mga lalaki ang Congress, is there a chance to repeal our law that punishes adultery and does not treat it the same way as concubinage? Meaning, for those who are listening, yung pagka mag-asawa at ang nag-cheat ay yung babae,
Mas
pwede
less.
siyang makulong agad for adultery. Whereas, pag yung lalaki may mistress na, harap-harapan ng may kabit, pero hindi pa rin pwedeng filean basta-basta because concubinage has so many elements that make it difficult to file a
Marami
case.
nang naka-file na resolution, na bill ever since ang tagal na ilang congresses na. Mula yata 15th Congress ko, nandiyan na yun, but it hasn't prospered until now.
Walang may gusto because again,
di siya nagpa-prosper until
kasi
now.
it will be to the disadvantage of men and of
like
course
I said,
it will...
marami pa ring batas na nahihirapan kaming ipasa sa Congress.
So itong Safe Spaces Act, how many years did it take for this to
I
get
really don't
passed?
remember kung ilang congresses to. Either 2 congresses, I'm not sure anymore, Karen. But hindi siya first Congress na ipasa kagad. That's for
Talaga,
sure.
it took a while.
It took a
to
while.
win. But there's
Kasi syempre yung catcalling, yung whistling, yung mga ganyan. Medyo
siguro yung guys,
tinututulan niya, tinututulan.
Tsaka siguro naisip nila, teka lang, masama ba yun?
At saka yung complimenting kasi, uy, ang sexy mo. Eh, di ba? Ang dami-daming lalaking gano'n mag-comment. So, it's hard. It took us several congresses also to pass this.
But the other side of it, there's a congressional oversight committee that was also created in this law. Is that still existing in Congress right now?
That's why you want to activate that, the oversight committee.
It's there pero hindi lang...
Normally kasi ang
Hindi
dami
nagagamit.
naming oversight eh. So
Yeah.
that's why kailangan binubuhay mo every time. Kasi syempre, binubuhay mo siya if it calls the attention na hindi na-implement yung batas na pinasa namin.
In
So
your
it's a good time
opinion,
to
really, if you have this probe before...
para ma-activate
Oo.
yung oversight committee.
Okay, so regardless of this campaign season, pwede yan. You'll have the probe soon.
Hopefully, I already wrote a letter to the speaker na sana pwede kasi kahit naman on recess kami, we can. Continuous naman yung probe.
Okay.
But even after naman elections, ang importante naman dito, this is naman para sa mga susunod pa na taon.
In your opinion, do you believe sexism and misogyny are still deeply embedded in local politics? But before you answer that question, we'll have to take a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. Congresswoman Bernadette, in your opinion, do you believe that sexism and misogyny are still deeply embedded in local politics?
Yes. Sobra. I'm sure after this, marami ka pang makikita sa social media na mag-upload. Kasi marami namang nagve-video pagka sa local politics. I'm sure marami yan. Marami pa rin yung, kasi hindi sila conscious eh. They're really not conscious about it. Akala nila talaga it's something na it's just normal. Normal na mag-jokes ka kahit hindi mo na alam na nakaka-offend ka. So, yes, sadly yes. Kaya there's a need to really announce and advocate the existence of this law. Kaya thank you for this opportunity, Attorney Karen, kasi with this, talagang pwede nating ipakalat na, hoy, may Safe Spaces Act, no, mag-ingat-ingat nga kayo. And then if COMELEC will really disqualify Attorney Sia or the other candidates, then it really sets an example. Kasi minsan, Karen, attorney, ito baka sa mga mabababang, sa mga bara-barangays, na baka may mga nafa-filean, pero yung mga nasa, what's this, yung mga higher positions, yun ang minsan hindi nakakasuhan ng ganito.
And do you think
Actually, in
that
the
some
workplace,
people...
yun yung madalas, yung sexual harassment in the workplace,
Oo,
yung
and
madalas.
that has an older law kasi,
Oo.
di ba before
Tapos
nga...
in-enhance lang namin
Yeah.
dito sa ating anti-sexual, dito sa anti-bastos law. So, yun ang madami. And pero normally, hindi siya high profile. That's what I'm looking for. Hindi siya high profile. So with this, medyo high profile ito dahil sa mga kandidato to or mga elected officials, then it sends a signal that the law does not discriminate who to file.
And you don't think that it's a harsh penalty to disqualify a candidate completely for making a sexist or misogynistic
No, because
joke?
you are running for office. You want to serve the public. Bakit mo gagawin yun to the very people that you want to serve? Then how can you serve people when you can't even be sensitive about their needs? Diba? Kasi you run for office, it's a responsibility. You have to take care of your people. If you're not sensitive to the needs of the people, then you have no place to be in public service.
But that disqualification last until future elections, but it's not perpetual.
It depends
it's
on
just for
COMELEC.
that.
Well,
It
I
depends
cannot
on
answer
COMELEC.
that. I cannot
Okay.
really answer. It depends on COMELEC. Kasi medyo vague yung kanilang election offense. Binabasa ko eh. I was asking, paano ba yan? So, it depends on them. Hindi ko sila pwedeng pangunahan. Ang dami nilang commissioners doon.
Yeah, it would be interesting to ask COMELEC how they'll
So I
deal
just
with that.
received the message from Pasig. They have an ordinance, but look at this, they just passed it in 2024. So we passed the law in 2019. The ordinance of Pasig was just passed in 2024. But
Took
at least
5
they
years.
have.
Yeah, but at least meron sila.
Eh,
But a
kasi-
lot of other local
Quezon City
governments
has.
wala.
I asked my brother yesterday, meron na ba kayo nito? Yes, ate, we have a localized ordinance kasi my brother's a city councilor of the 1st District of Quezon City. So, sabi ko, kayo ba meron na nito? Meron naman na daw.
Okay. Well, the law itself says that the LGUs, in Section 34,
Yeah.
the LGUs are required to have an assessment every 3 years
Yes.
of the effective implementation of this law. It's a safe space
Yeah.
audit. So, ano nangyari?
Well, katulad nga nito, like I'm saying, 5 years after pa yung ordinance nila. So, ngayon pa lang sila mag-audit, di ba? Kami yun. Actually, kami ang dapat mag-audit sa mga LGUs if they were able to do this. Like, after, malagpas 3 years na to, katulad nito, like, Pasig 2024, but at least they have. So, happy naman kami na meron sila. Kaya dapat lang, that's why I'm doing this probe, para makita and call on the ILG, sila mag-submit sa amin, ano talaga na ang mga LGUs that's implementing the law. Kasi, Attorney Karen, if we don't do this, mamaliitin nila yung mga batas na pinapasa namin sa Congress. Because if it's not being implemented, then they're not taking seriously the laws that we pass in Congress.
And it's not top of mind. I mean, the
It's not top of
awareness,
mind,
oo.
obviously.
Yeah.
So, at least with the advent of social media, maraming nagiging top of mind. Yun lang, like you said, clogging of courts lang ang kasunod nun. So, thank you for your suggestion. We'll
Yeah,
take a look at
perhaps
that.
take a look at that.
Yeah, amend na natin yung law. We'll file that. No, but that's a very valid point, attorney.
And let's go to you as a politician. Bagong henerasyon is your party list. Is this part of your advocacy ever since? Yung women's rights?
Yes, youth and women, kasi kaya nga siya bagong henerasyon. Talagang youth and women, the empowerment, youth, women, and micro-entrepreneurs. Yan ang talagang pinoprotection na namin in terms of empowering them with knowledge and skills. Yan ang aking knowledge and skills, kasi skills is the new global currency. Dapat lahat tayo may skill, lahat dapat may trabaho, may negosyo. I want to bridge the digital divide. Yan yung unang-una ko, when I was city councilor, yan na talagang una kong agenda, to bridge the digital divide. Wala dapat ignorante, lahat may alam. We have to empower with knowledge yung ating mga kababayan para alam nila.
Since you're advocating for knowledge and skills, in the 19th Congress, when there was a reduction in the education budget and an increase in the infrastructure budget, how did you deal with that?
Well, kaya tayo nag-call ng attention kasi pagka nandyan na yung budget, wala naman na tayong magagawa after the BICAM if it's there already. In several pre-plenary and plenary debates, I've asked this several questions already. Tas ako pa yung nag-suggest na sana yung computer literacy program ng DepEd ma-increase kasi ang liit ng budget nun. So, syempre, I was disappointed na decrease yung budget nila kasi ang dami pa rin computer illiterate in our country. Can you imagine, Attorney Karen, in this age of globalization, marami pa rin hindi marunong mag-computer sa ating mga far-flung areas. That's why I suggested to Secretary Angara yung mobile schools ko kasi I have mobile schools na may computers inside. I park this in every barangay, in every school to give free literacy. Our youngest graduate is 4 years old. Ang oldest namin is 88 years old. Kailangan to So,
When you say far-flung hanggang Mindanao, umaabot yan?
well, I want to. Hanggang Visayas lang ang pinakamalayo ko Aklan lang yung naging malayo ko. So I was hoping na I'm hoping na mas spread ko pa to. That's why I reminded Secretary Angara during the pre-plenary budget that if he can take a look at this as an example, kasi it's also hard to put computers in all schools. We don't have the budget for that. Pero yun nga yung masaklap kasi, pag sinabi mong dapat pinakamataas ang DepEd, it's not the DepEd per se. I-add mo yung technical, yung TESDA, i-add mo iba. Tapos, all the other agencies na may educational component, ina-add kasi lahat yon to come up na, ito, highest pa rin yung education. Kasi dapat talaga highest yung education.
Yeah, according to our Constitution.
Oo, according to our Constitution.
Yeah.
So, parang ginagawang siyang technical. Hindi, highest naman siya because other agencies also have educational components So when you add TESDA, when you add DepEd, when you add then it's the highest.
But your own assessment, kulang.
Kulang.
Oo, yung sa
Kulang.
education lang talaga. Let's take out the other agencies that would qualify supposedly just because of their educational component. Pero yung talagang core education natin that would affect the children that go to school, the students, kulang.
Kulang Kasi attorney, isa sa mga dati ko pa sinasuggest na meron naman ng gantong version with DepEd is that there are a lot of private schools in our country. Napakadami nating private schools at marami na rin nagsasara. Ang sa akin, instead of building more classrooms para mabawasan ang infrastructure natin, why not make an arrangement with the existing private schools, make use of their facilities para natutulungan mo na yung small private schools, nakakabawas ka pa ng infra na dadagdag mo sa educational budget. Diba? This is always my passion and advocacy, yung PPP, public-private partnership. That's why I'm one of the authors of that law. Make use of existing facilities. Like for example, there are a lot of TESDA schools right now na nagsasara na. Kasi wala na silang estudyante. Because TESDA also has its own training facility, which should not be. So why not partner with the existing technical vocational schools kesa magsara sila? Gamitin ang facility sila. Kesa we build our own, it's a waste of money of the government. Make use of existing infrastructure. Di wala ka pang corruption when it comes to infrastructure biddings and all that.
That's usually a large source of leakage.
That's why.
Yeah.
So, I always call on partnership with the private sector para hindi nasasayang at namamaximize ang pera ng gobyerno. So I was just texting Secretary Angara this. Alam mo naman, magaling naman si Sec Angara. Agad-agad naman yan uma-action. Meron naman tayong test, ginagamit natin yan. Sabi ko lang dapat palakihin. So that's what we're gonna focus on also in the coming 20th Congress.
Well, Congresswoman Bernadette, you've finished 3 terms.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So, paano yan? With the Bagong Henerasyon party list, you're not going to be a nominee anymore. Who's your first nominee?
But I'm still the chairman of the party list.
So
ako pa rin,
in terms of the advocacy, you
because
can
of the
guide
advocacy.
pa rin.
So ako pa rin naman yung chairman nito. So yung may nominees naman, ano naman kami? We have we have a board na syempre nag-assemblies naman kami. And the decision naman we make, we really pass it on to the group. So it's not the first, second nominee will always abide with the decision of the board and also our members.
So for June is when we switch to the 20th Congress. Politically, you're not going to be involved in the front lines, but you'll be involved through your party list.
I'll be the chief of staff. I'll be the chief of staff of Robert Nazar. He's our first nominee. And he's very capable. As a matter of fact, there's one law that it won't be a law if not because of him. It's the 105 days maternity leave. So when we were passing this law, I passed this already in Congress and then sa Senate. So I received letter from the Office of the President that it was going to be vetoed. So I was already crying kasi we've been passing this law for a long time. So I asked Robert, I go, can you text Bongo? At the time, he was not yet senator, so that I can explain the law. So tinext niya, sabi ni Sen Bongo, I'm in Hong Kong. So he flew to Hong Kong, spoke to Bongo, and then 3 a.m. in the morning, I was talking to Bongo and telling him, Sen, ganito po yan, the women will love you, the mothers will love you, lahat naman tayo galing sa nanay natin, why don't we give this benefit to our children, to our women, to our mothers, and all that, So they went home, the president did not veto it.
So
it became a law.
naging law
naging
na siya.
batas siya. But if he did not fly there, wala na. Hindi na siya batas.
So this is your first nominee now.
Yeah.
So let's go, since we only have a few minutes left, go back to this issue now of sexism, misogyny, and the Safe Spaces Act. What is your message to the candidates out there and to your fellow public officials?
Sa mga tumatakbo po, public service is a responsibility. Sana we take this seriously. Huwag nating gamitin katatawanan ng mga kababaihan or mga kalalakihan or lahat. Be sensitive to how you make your speeches. Stick to your platform. Stick to what you want to do for the people. And not make jokes just to liven up the crowd. Marami pong ma-offend, hindi lang nagsasalita. So please, be sensitive to the needs of our people. They are counting on us to uplift their lives. So let us stick to that and let us do that para naman mas umunlad yung ating bansa.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
Congresswoman
And
Bernadette
especially yung
Herrera.
solo parents natin, Attorney Karen, I just have to mention this. Please take a second look sa ating mga solo parents. Ina at ama sila sa isang katawan. Do not forget that. If there is anyone who needs help, yung solo parents yun. So to the LGUs, please implement the solo parent law.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you,
And I can
Atty.
relate to that.
Karen.
Sabi ko, as a parent, naku, tama ka, ang hirap nga maging solo parent.
Diba? Imagine mo kung wala kang asawa.
Oo, kaya I
How
can
do you
just
divide your
imagine.
time? Nandito ka. Who's with your child?
Oo, thank
Ang
you
sakit
so
sa atin,
much.
yaya ang kasama.
Yeah. Thank you for including that in our ending.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Bernadette.
Thank you, Atty. Karen.
Congresswoman Bernadette Herrera remains firm in calling out sexism and misogyny, especially from those seeking public office. She believes candidates must uphold and practice a higher standard for public demeanor and speech. For her, protecting the dignity of women and solo parents is not just a campaign issue, it's a duty. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news, always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for meaningful conversations that enhance a better understanding of issues that we face in our everyday lives. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Thank you for spending your hour with us.